Planting the seeds of our future is the most important thing we can be doing. Don't you agree? And saving seeds for our future is a simple yet powerful step. Take a moment to look around your garden. The plants that are doing really well are the ones to save seeds from. Learning to harvest seeds from those special plants is easier than you think, and with a bit of instruction, anyone can become a seed-saving superstar. Let Urban Farm U teach you how in our free upcoming seed-saving webinar. Just text the word SEEDS to 33444 to sign up, or visit urbanfarm.org for more information. Remember, that's SEEDS to 33444. You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Ginger Duncan of Mystic Mountain to talk about her experience living in the wilderness of Alaska. Ginger Duncan is the owner and director of Mystic Mountain Sustainability Learning Center. She loves her wilderness lifestyle and hopes to develop an eco-village on her 40-acre homestead on Kodiak Island in the Gulf of Alaska. Although Ginger has lived on the island for 45 years, it wasn't until she started living off-grid around 16 years ago that she really began connecting with the earth and her personal responsibility to live in harmony with it. She realized that the more she learned, the more she wanted to learn and share her knowledge. Ginger loves clean eating and is passionate about showing people that a healthy diet can be delicious, not deprivational, that growing your own food is tremendously empowering, and that fitness can be fun. Welcome to the show today, Ginger.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to chat with you and your guests.
Absolutely. So I shared just a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Certainly. Yeah, I moved to the island of Kodiak when I was 2 years old because my father was a shrimper and crabber. And I grew up here always thinking that I was trapped and there was nothing to do. And it was such a horrible state of affairs to be stuck here. And it wasn't until I met my husband that I realized how fortunate I was to live here. Mm-hmm. He introduced me to Offgrid living. We went out to the 40-acre homestead on which he had formerly operated a Sitka blacktail deer hunting lodge.
Oh, wow.
And I just fell in love with it and him simultaneously.
How nice.
It's just exquisite. The real authentic wilderness of Alaska is absolutely mind-blowing. And when I started living in the middle of it and seeing the beauty and the bounty of resources, it just kind of crystallized for me the responsibility that we have for taking care of that. And so I started learning about how to use what was in front of me. We were operating a sport fishing and ecotourism lodge for a number of years out of our homestead. And as part of my duties, I was responsible for guiding people through the woods and along the beaches. Wow. So I started making a point of learning about foraging for wild edibles and medicinals. So I can take you for a walk in the woods and we can graze our way through the forest. We can go down to the beach and I'll pry things off of rocks and stick them in your mouth. And it's great fun to know that I have the ability to eat out of the wild. Yeah. And so I learned about food preservation techniques thereafter so that I could put some of this food up for later. And so I learned about smoking fish. Our smoker will hold 24 fish at a time.
Oh my God.
I learned about dehydrating. Mm-hmm. We make our own venison jerky and fruit leather. And we dry things to put in mason jars on the shelf so I can take out fresh celery from my garden any time of the year that's been dried. I am a freak about pressure cooking. I own 5
Oh my gosh, really?
I have 5.
Wow.
3 out at camp and 2 in town so that I am never without the ability to do some pressure cooking.
Wow.
And I just find it really rewarding to be able to look at my pantry shelves. I'm looking right now at salmonberry juice, rhubarb juice, canned salmon, canned venison, pickled garlic, pickled tomatoes, pickled nasturtium pods, relishes,
wow,
soups and stews that I can. So instead of opening a store-bought can with the BPA liners and the chemical-laden food in it, I know I'm eating clean. So that's been a lot of fun for me. And I love teaching that to other people. That was the impetus behind the Sustainability Learning Center, is showing people what you can do. Because I've always believed what one man can do, another can do. And I didn't know once upon a time. And now that I do, I want others to as well.
Isn't that cool? I that's part of what drives me too. It's like I have all this great knowledge up in my head and I want to share it with people.
Yeah, it's very exciting when you learn what you are capable of. Because we live on an island too, we are very susceptible to interruptions in the food supply. Everything that is in the store here is either coming in by jets or on the huge container ships. And I don't think many people realize that if there was an interruption, whether terrorism, natural disaster, an accident, whatever, our store shelves could be empty in the matter of a couple of days. And how many people would know what to do, how to provide for their families.
Right.
And even here on an island that was colonized by Alaskan natives thousands of years ago, much of that knowledge of the subsistence lifestyle has been lost. It's not being passed on. And I find that incredibly sad. So I want to combat it.
So I'm looking at the map. I'm just trying to place you on the map. The pictures in here, when I did a Google search for Kodiak Island, are just stunningly beautiful.
It is. Kodiak is spectacular. One of its nicknames is the Emerald Isle. Similar to Ireland, very, very lush, 1,000 shades of green. That's because we do have a great deal of precipitation. Islands tend to make their own weather. Another of its nicknames is the northernmost Hawaiian island.
Oh, yes.
Reminds me a lot of Kauai. Just real dramatic, jagged cliffs and mountains, thick vegetation, a stunning sea that is so powerful it can beat you up or placate you. Sometimes in the same day.
So it's a fairly large island at the south end of Alaska.
Yeah, Kodiak is about 80 miles long and about 60 miles wide. The only island bigger than us is the big island of Hawaii. And the only reason that they qualify as larger than us is purely land mass, because we have a great deal of fjords, deep inlets and bays.
I see that. I see that on the map,
Yeah, and we are, if you envision Alaska like someone running and leaping over Kodiak, that's where we're situated, is kind of the panhandle that comes along Canada and the Aleutian chain that goes out towards Russia. Those sort of straddle our island. But we're about 550 air miles from the mainland. So to get to my home takes extra effort. There are quite a few commercial flights during the day from the city of Anchorage down to Kodiak. Once you get here, the only way to get to my home is by air taxi, small planes that hold only 4 or 5 people that will land on the ocean, or by sea. And that's normally the way we travel because we can carry more gear and supplies when we go by boat. So from the city of Kodiak, we have to drive 13 miles over a mountain pass on a really gnarly, not potholed road to a bay that is on the northern tip, the other side of the northern tip of the island. And then all of the supplies and gear have to get taken out of the truck, walk down the dock, loaded in a skiff, which is an open boat with no cabin on it.
Right.
And then we put on all kinds of gear, dependent on the season, for an hour-long boat ride home over open ocean.
Wow.
But my commute is quite unlike yours, I'm sure. We pass a sea otter colony that numbers in the hundreds. We pass a bird rookery that is one of the largest in the northern hemisphere. Wow. Quite often we see whales. Always we see eagles, sometimes porpoise, sometimes deer or fox on the beach. So my ride home can be quite scenic, but it can also be quite brutal. There are times where I've made that run myself and cried and prayed my way home at the top of my lungs because the ocean conditions were such I wasn't sure if I was going to make it home.
Yeah. Wow. So what's the population of Kodiak Island?
The city of Kodiak numbers around 10 to 11,000. That is largely Well, there's the bureaucracy that it takes to run any community, but there's a big Coast Guard community here. We have the largest Coast Guard base in the Northern Hemisphere as well. And so they have personnel and their families that are always rotating in and out of here. And we're also the second largest fishing port in the entire state of Alaska.
Oh,
so
wow.
a huge portion of our community is made up of fishermen.
Wow. Oh, so thank you so much for that picture of your commute. Let's call it your commute, because my commute to the coffee house is about 4 minutes around the corner. I'll bet you don't have one of those, do you?
No, in the city of Kodiak, there are a few coffee shops, but I spend as little time in the city as possible. To me, the real Alaska is out in the bush.
Yeah, nice. My city is 4.4 million people.
Wow.
Yeah, no kidding.
So far, ours is 2, but I do hope to change that in the future.
Yeah. You say you live an off-grid subsistence lifestyle at Mystic Mountain. What does that entail?
Well, it means that anything we need, we better be able to provide for ourselves. We live off the land in almost every way possible. We have a spring-fed creek that comes out of the mountain, which stands over camp. And we've harnessed the energy from that creek with a micro hydroelectric system that gives us power. So all 8 of our buildings have electricity, courtesy of Mother Nature. So we aren't burning any petroleum products. So there's no pollution created as a result of providing for our electric needs. We have no television reception, no cell service, no internet. So when I say we are off grid, I mean we are so far off grid that those things just don't even enter in the realm of our existence. And the subsistence portion of our lifestyle entails really working hard to be a good steward of the land, to take advantage of all the resources around us while having as little impact as possible. So I gather wild edibles and medicinals from May through October. I put up a lot of food from the wild, and also I grow quite a bit of organic produce. So we really try to put as little demand on the planet as possible and to have as little impact as we can.
Wow. So let's talk about that. So first of all, your day length in the wintertime is, call it December 21st, is how long is your day?
We have about 6 hours of daylight in December. And
so that means you have probably 18 hours in June?
As much as 21, actually.
Oh, wow.
And that's part of why the plants go berserk with all that daylight. They're just growing like crazy.
Right. So you have a shorter growing season, longer days.
Exactly. And what I was fascinated to learn when I first started getting into gardening, which was only a couple years ago, is that the light is way more important than heat. So it's the daylight hours that the plants get their energy from. And so our growing season is short because the ground is still so cool. A couple years ago, I tried to rush things and I planted seeds in my garden, but the soil was too cold and the plants ended up stunted. They never really recovered from that. Yeah. And so I have hoop houses now that I got through a NRCS grant program, and then we can bump up the soil temperature slightly by putting secondary hoops over individual beds.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and then mulch is also a really great insulator that helps keep some heat in. And so we can extend it somewhat. And in fact, there are quite a few growers here in Kodiak who are using their hoop houses and other practices to grow almost year round here. The cool weather crops like brassicas can actually be planted in August, and they get mature enough before the real cold sets in.
Oh, wow.
And then they will kind of go dormant for a couple months, but they don't die. One of my girlfriends has a hoop house that is full of lettuces and kales and collards. So even though it's January, they can still walk out there and pick fresh produce.
Wow. Wow. And that's probably a really important thing for you all to be doing, is to grow that stuff up there. Because I'll bet you if you had to buy it, it would be very expensive.
Oh, the grocery store prices here are incredible. You would not believe. I've had people up here who just about go into shock when they walk through our local Safeway. And that is the only grocery store that we have. So unless you are growing or gathering your own food, you really have no choice. And it can be, Kodiak is actually the most expensive city in the entire state of Alaska to live in.
Wow.
So defraying that cost by growing my own or gathering what we can from the wild not only saves me money, but it also is giving me a wider variety of choices. Yeah. The food is more nutritious because I'm literally picking it while it's still alive and throwing it in my salad bowl, and life is still coursing through it. So it's giving me way more nutrients than something that's been on a barge for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So what does a head of lettuce cost at Safeway?
Oh, I think probably around to buy organic is probably $5-6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So bell peppers are $4 each.
So it probably is fairly expensive to go out to eat then too.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I can't think of anything in Kodiak that's not expensive.
Not expensive? Yeah. There you go. So you mentioned earlier food security, and I want to kind of touch on that and get your sense of what that means to you, being food secure and food security issues.
Sure. Yeah. Well, when I first started gardening a couple years ago and started researching the state of America's food supply, I was absolutely appalled. In fact, my scalp just tightened up now thinking about it. Yeah. Many other countries in the world have outlawed GMOs. Yes. They understand that these things are killing us. But, there are lobbyists and monetary connections between our governing agencies and corporations that want to make money. So they're working to control the world's seed supply. Like 78% of the world's seed supply is now owned by 4 companies. And they're messing about with genes so that they can spray them with more and more pesticides that makes insect stomachs explode. Oh, but they're okay for you to eat. Yeah. Not in my opinion. There are so many illnesses, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, so many things, leaky gut. So many things are coming as a result of the food that people are eating. Yeah. And I just think that, there's a better way. And to grow your own gives you that confidence of knowing that it's clean. Nobody's sprayed it with poison. They haven't messed around with its DNA. It was real food the way it's intended to be. So I use all heirloom seeds and all organic practices.
Perfect. Fantastic. So how much of your own food do you grow?
That's a little bit hard to quantify because I use so much of it as thank you gifts for friends or for...
Isn't that nice?
And bartering is a big deal for us too. If I can't justify spending big chunk of change on something, but the person's willing to trade, I'll give them a nice goodie basket of canned venison stew and dehydrated herbs and all kinds of yummies. And people really appreciate that because not everybody has the time or the knowledge to do those things themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, we do the same in a city of 4.4 million here in Phoenix. My sweetie Heidi has a client. She's a yoga teacher here in town, and she has a client that she takes a weekly food basket to out of our yard.
Nice.
And
awesome.
they just love that. It just it sparkles up their day. And so sharing it, bartering it it's moving forward. I think it's one of the more important things that we can be doing. Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly. I think we need to do more of it.
So let's talk about an interesting word called wildcrafting. So why don't you tell us what your definition of wildcrafting is, and then talk about what you wildcraft up there.
Well, to me, wildcrafting means taking advantage of the God-given properties in a plant to minister to my own or my family's health, nurturing, well-being. So there are an incredible number of plants on this island that we can harvest to eat or to make salves. So I have, just on my property alone, I have stinging nettles, which can be used for edible or medicinal. Yep. There's plantain, yarrow, watercress, about 3, 4, 5 different kinds of berries, goldenrod for making teas that minister to a woman's issues. There are just a wealth of them. Even dandelions. Dandelions grow just about everywhere, and that's a plant that offers. You can roast the roots to eat, or or you can make a coffee substitute out of them. You can use the leaves in salads. But wildcrafting plants for salves, making like balm of Gilead for healing. Or if someone's had an injury or a sprain, grabbing comfrey and wrapping that around the injury helps healing faster. You know, back in the day, the Native American Indians knew there was a plant for that.
Yeah.
Not an app. There's a plant for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And no matter what issue they were facing, they knew they could go get the bark off the willow trees and chew it for a toothache, or just all these wonderful things. It's just fascinating.
Yeah. I regularly drink roasted dandelion tea.
Nice.
Apparently it's a good liver detox. Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. So basically wildcrafting is going out and finding what's growing out there and using it.
Yes, and like our Devil's Club is a plant here that looks quite vicious. It's a very tall stalk, really woody, with nasty spikes on it, horrible thorns, and big, big, beautiful leaves that kind of look like a 1.5 wide maple leaf. But if you wear your leather gloves and tell the plant that you're thankful for its sacrifice towards your health, dig up the root, you can make tea out of that, and it is actually our indigenous form of ginseng.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Cool.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next one. How about, do you catch things up there? I'm sure you do. It's Alaska.
Yeah, it's one of the wildest places remaining on the earth. The bulk of our protein consumption is from things that we have caught or harvested from the wild. My husband is a commercial salmon fisherman, has been for almost half a century.
Wow.
And so we go out for part of the summer and catch several species of salmon. And we always make a point, besides selling some of it to the cannery, we also put up quite a bit of it for our own reserve to eat throughout the year. We'll smoke some, we can some, we dehydrate some, just making sure that we have quite a variety of that put up. Halibut is another favorite. Cod. Those are both fish that we catch literally right in our front yard. And venison. It's the only red meat we eat, are these beautiful creatures that have lived a wild and free life. And then my husband is a crack shot. It's one bullet, one kill, no suffering. And that one animal will feed us and our crew for many, many, many meals.
Wow.
So we're really grateful for those resources. And we understand, with our commitment to food purity, we understand that it's harder for people in the lower 48 at times to get hold of these things. I have a girlfriend in Denver, Colorado. I have supplied her with seafood for probably the last 14 years. And she and her husband and kids only eat Alaskan seafood that they get from us. They won't buy it in the store. Quite often, unfortunately, fish in the store is mislabeled, whether they're just trying to clear the shelves of last year's stock. There was actually a study and a report on the news here recently about intentional mislabeling. So I think it's important to know, obviously, where your food comes from. And we are committed to being one of those sources. If people are interested in getting the highest quality of Alaskan seafood, they can check out our website, and we have a page there totally committed to taking orders ahead of the season so that as we fish, we are catching this many pounds for Joe, and we're catching this many pounds for Sarah, and then we will send it to you at its absolute freshest. It will be frozen, because that is a good way to preserve food. It does not deteriorate while it's cryogenically preserved. But we will ship fish south all season long, from probably starting next month when we begin jigging for cod, and then halibut a little bit later in the season, and then salmon throughout the summer.
Great. How do I find out about that?
Well, you can visit mysticmountain.org and go to our Fish for Sale page.
Fantastic. So let's talk about Mystic Mountain. So this is you're working on an intentional community, and it says you have visitors and volunteers that come there. What do they do when they come there, and what is Mystic Mountain? Tell me about that.
Sure. Well, Mystic Mountain is my vision for what our property could be in the future if we can get some like-minded folks to come and invest their energies and possibly their finances in creating a micro community that is committed to self-sufficiency. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as sustainability, that we have the same principles in that regard. And that we can share the workload. That lifestyle of being off grid is really, really gratifying, but it's also really, really demanding. And we've been doing it for a long time. My husband was out there for 16 years before he met me. And then together we've been doing it for the last 15 or 16.
Wow.
And we're kind of getting worn out. But in that time, we have acquired a wealth of knowledge about how to live successfully in the wilderness. And we've also developed a pretty great infrastructure at a pretty incredible location. And because we have so much timber on the property for either milling to our own lumber or using for firewood, we have this creek that is the sweetest water you've ever tasted. And even with no rain this past summer in town, our creek was still flowing strong and providing us with all the electricity and drinking and running water we wanted.
Wow.
And so the resources are incredible. And I know that we could sustain easily 4 or 5 more entities out there, be they families or couples. But we would like to get the attention of some folks who want to give it a whirl that have skills that we don't necessarily have. We're good at some things, but we're not mechanics. It'd be super cool to have somebody out there who knew how to tinker with engines and keep them maintained. Because if something goes wrong, if something breaks, we can't just trot down to Home Depot and part. So it's really important to keep things well maintained.
Right.
We'd love a kind of a handyman person who knows about carpentry and plumbing and just general fixes like that. I love gardening. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. But when you're trying to provide as much as possible for as many people as possible, you need more than one person to make it work. And everything is more fun when it's shared anyway, and you can kind of feed off each other's energy, and you share the same experience and can compare notes. So having people out there who love getting their hands in the dirt and are familiar with composting and successive planting would just be a blast for me, and it would free me up to do other things that I simply don't have the time for now.
Oh, I hear you on that one. When Heidi, my partner, and I got together and started living together here at the urban farm, everything became much easier because all of a sudden we had, 2 sets of hands and 2 brains, and it turned really nice.
Yes, many hands make light work, and again, the sharing of the memories is so precious when you experience something together with other people, and afterwards you can just look at each other and it's like, wow, did you just see that whale breach 20 feet in front of our skiff? Well, how could I miss it? And you both have a picture in your head for the rest of your life and can relive it. It's pretty cool.
How fantastic is that? So Mystic Mountain Sustainability Learning Center, if I wanted to come there and spend some time, I could do that?
Yes, and that is something I've been working towards for the last few years, and PR and marketing is not my forte. I've been kind of pushing forward, but I'm not real experienced at it. So I really enjoy this opportunity to get the word out. The point of the Sustainability Learning Center is to share these skills. People can come up and be a student for whatever length of time they have available. Let me know. We'll discuss ahead of time what skills they want to learn, and I will mentor them, make sure that I teach them about, food preservation or foraging or alternative energy or boat safety. So the point of that program is to just share what we've learned and help others get excited about what they never knew they were capable of.
Wow. And
I do have volunteers that come up every year to lend a hand, and they're my very precious little minions that are, they do some of the dirty work, the elbow grease. In return for their efforts, they get free room and board, and I teach them a lot of the same skills, anything that they want to learn.
Yeah.
This summer, we'll have a young couple coming up that will be committing to 6 months with me, which is a pretty big deal.
Wow, no kidding.
For somebody to arrive in early May and stay through early October is a pretty large commitment.
Yeah.
But in return, what they're going to see is from start to finish.
Yeah.
Planting seeds, making seedlings, putting them in the ground, all the way through harvesting and amending the beds for winter. So it's a wonderful trade-off, and I absolutely could not have done what we have out there without our volunteers.
Yeah. That sounds like an experience of a lifetime.
Quite.
Yeah. Wow. How cool is that? Okay, good. I'm going to shift a little bit here. And I want to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from that.
Well, last summer, my husband came home from a trip to town for supplies and said that we had the opportunity to go run someone else's boat for a couple of months for the Bristol Bay sockeye season.
Uh-huh.
And that was exciting to me because we've never been to Dillingham, and it was a different facet of the fishing industry than we'd seen. But unfortunately, I had just finished planting my entire garden. And we're talking about 3,500 square feet of indoor and outdoor beds.
Right.
And the departure date was only a couple of days away.
Mm-hmm.
And with our lack of communication out there, there was absolutely no time for me to find anybody to come caretake the gardens or the property. And so I had to walk away from all of my plants and just wish them the best.
Oops.
And I came back 2 months later to find that what hadn't been choked out by the weeds was parched from lack of water or baked to death from nobody being there to open the hoop house walls and let the heat out. And so my failure in that regard was not planning ahead for that possibility. And so I learned to do a little more research ahead of time, take a little bit more time to make sure things are done right the first time, because there's always more on your list than there is time in the day.
That is the
and
case.
So I'm going to be focusing this year on installing an irrigation system that is on solar panels and timers so that the watering will be automatic.
Yes.
We're also going to incorporate a whole lot more organic material into the soil and putting on a layer of mulch to help retain moisture. So the biggest lesson I took away from that is to look for the lesson in it, learn from it, and move on, and not agonize about what's already been, but just take that as a growth experience.
Fantastic. So what do you consider your biggest success?
Well, our very first year of growing out there in 2013, we produced so much organic produce that I had to share it. There was no way we could eat it all. And so I would load up coolers full of my yummy veggies and rhubarb and home baked goods and home canned goods into our skiff and then run for an hour over the open ocean to a nearby native village. For 6 weeks in a row, I was there every Wednesday and would announce on the radio that I'd arrived, and the villagers would come and purchase my products for their consumption. They had no grocery store, so they were very excited about it.
Wow.
And they even talked about building a CSA, starting a community-supported agriculture. Well, at that time, 2 years ago, the fuel costs were quite a bit higher than they are now. And so I really was only breaking even, but that wasn't my intent, wasn't to make a killing. It was to inspire. And so one of my great successes is the fact that they have since then applied for and been granted the funds to build their own hoop house in the community for the community. So they're going to be able to grow on site, which is awesome. And the second, my favorite success was just last summer. I had a girlfriend come up to spend 3 weeks with me, and she brought her small children, 4 and 6 years old.
Wow.
And I will never forget little Oz crying for most of the skiff ride on the way to our home because he didn't want to be there. This was all too much. It was a little scary, out of his element. They weren't happy. And then got to the homestead, got them set up in their cabin. And she was from Utah and coming to Kodiak where it was only 45 or 50 degrees. She was cold. The kids were cold. So after about 2 days of dealing with not having a functional toilet, not having constant heat at the push of a button, she was about ready to leave by day 2, thinking this was a little overwhelming, had no idea what I was getting into. But bless her heart, she stuck it out. She stayed for the whole 3 weeks, Those kids helped me patrol the gardens every morning with chopsticks to pick up slugs. They helped me make carrot seed tapes and plant them, planted potatoes, caught their first fish while they were with us.
Wow.
It was so exciting. They learned so much that they didn't even know that they knew. But when I got an email in late summer saying that upon their return home to Utah, they had broken ground and planted their very first garden, I literally did a little happy dance. It was, so rewarding. So I want to say a big shout out to Oz and Ella.
Nice.
Yep. And they've been asking their mom ever since when they're going to come back to Alaska.
When they're going to come back. How fantastic is that?
So cool.
So it's kind of a deep question. What drives you? What's your big why?
I guess the desire to make a difference. I really love when somebody makes some small or large change in their life as a result of something they've heard from me. I share information at every opportunity, and I've had friends who say, I quit drinking soda because of you, Ginger, or I switched to all organic for the Dirty Dozen because of what you told me. So having a positive impact on people's lives, inspiring them to do something, maybe it's composting for the first time or making more of an effort to recycle. If I can nudge or assist somebody in making some small change like that, then I've made a difference in the world in the right direction. Fantastic. And I find that really gratifying.
Yeah. I can completely get that. What projects are you currently working on?
The irrigation is probably the most crucial one for the sake of the plants. But besides that, we have high hopes of building a cob oven this year out of locally gathered materials. One of my dear friends actually gets paid to fly all over the world and assist people in building their own pizza ovens.
Oh, nice.
And we helped her build hers at her homestead here a couple months ago. And so we have slated the project to build our own, and all of the materials are gathered locally. And that's what I find fascinating about cob ovens is no matter where you are in the world, you can gather materials from your local area to build one that will serve and last in your climate. So that's pretty exciting to me. I also want to build a rocket stove.
Oh, yes.
Because, I think that would be a nice addition to our place. In the past, whenever we do any clearing and we cut brush and there are all these little brush piles, we've always just burned them thinking that they're waste. But if I had a rocket stove, all those little twigs and branches actually become a valuable fuel source. And perhaps, ideally, I will be able to do some of my canning on the rocket stove and thereby save on propane.
Yes, absolutely, all that. I know that to be true. So good job.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Good job. So, okay, I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there one book that's been really influential for you on this journey that you've been on?
Well, gosh, there are so many. And because we don't have internet out there, the only resources I have within my grasp at any given moment are books. So I have quite an extensive library at home. But one of the most inspirational that was kind of an impetus for me was Living the Good Life by Scott and Helen Nearing.
Oh, wow.
And it was actually written in, I forget, like the late 60s or early 70s. But this couple decided that they didn't like living in the cement society. They knew they could do better, become more connected with the land. And so they up and moved and they created a homestead. And even when the going was tough, they had these principles of sticking to their plan. And they adhered to it. They grew because of it. They learned what they were capable of, and their impact on the planet just drastically diminished. And so I was like, well, what one man can do, another can do. If they can do this, I can too. So that was a real good starter book for me, for sure.
How cool is that? All right. What was the name of it again?
Living the Good Life by Scott and Helen Nearing.
Perfect. And that'll be on the show notes page for today. What final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
I suppose it would be to just start somewhere. If you've been thinking about doing something, just do it. Jump in with both feet and see what happens. So the worst that could happen is that you learn from a mistake. But if it's recycling for the first time or finding a local community garden to participate in, or plant some herbs in pots right outside your kitchen door. Once you tackle one small project and you have success in that, then you'll have the confidence to try the next one, and you can build on that. I would encourage people not to start too large, that you want to not set yourself up for failure. You do want to make sure that you've got something figured out, handled, it's working for you, and then take on the next thing. And most of your listeners have such incredible resources at their fingertips, whether it's YouTube videos, garden clubs, Facebook groups, nurseries that offer classes like your awesome Root Phoenix, which I have taken classes at your place before, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, so whatever, gardeners are nurturers by nature, and they love to help plants and people grow. So reach out to what's around you, decide what you want to try, get some information. And speaking of information, be sure that you're not going to head the wrong direction as far as city ordinances and such. You don't want to create more problems for yourself. So find out what your limits are. Start somewhere and do something and then move on from there, and you will be surprised at what you're capable of.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Ginger. It's been a treat. How can our listeners get a hold of you?
Well, you can check out our website. That's www.mysticmountain.org. And that's Mystic, MYSTIC. And my email address is on there. My cell phone is on there. Feel free to give me a jingle or drop me a line. Great. I am here for answering any questions that I can.
Great. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg.
Would you like to grow your own healthy organic food? Once you know the secrets, it's really quite simple. Imagine saving money at the grocery store, increasing your intake of organic whole foods, cultivating greater food security, and feeling more connected to the earth. Let Urban Farm U diffuse your gardening doubts in our upcoming free webinar, Gardening Unearthed. We will walk you through the 7 key factors for growing your own healthy organic food easily and without any hard labor. Just text the word garden to 44222 to sign up for your free webinar, or visit urbanfarm.org for more information. With the right knowledge in place, there's no such thing as a black thumb. Remember, that's garden to 44222 to sign up for your free gardening webinar. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.